All right, everyone. So here's the next episode of the podcast. Today I have a good friend of mine, Dante. I've known him for a very long time. He wanted to talk about RuneScape, which is not something that I necessarily had an interest in. I've never really played any MMOs, but this conversation was very fascinating. It's on the shorter end for the series, but I think even if you're not a person who plays video games or plays MMOs, the discussion itself was actually very interesting. There's a lot of ideas in the design philosophy of RuneScape, and the community aspect of it was very fascinating and not something I would have realized going in. So just a reminder, everyone, that no one in these episodes is an expert. This shouldn't be taken as expert opinion, but I think this is a very fun episode, especially if you're not someone who knows a lot about RuneScape. I think you can definitely still enjoy this. So let's go ahead and give it a watch. All right, Dante, thank you for coming on. So you wanted to talk about RuneScape. Now,
Yeah.
so what made you want to choose this topic? Like, why was this the thing that you really wanted to talk about?
I have spent the last probably close to 4 years at this point basically maining this game,
Mm-hmm.
and it's become a pretty central point in not just my free time but my social life.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much where most of my friends are congregated, what I go to in my free time, what if I don't know what I'm doing, this is where I am.
Yeah, so it's a big part of your life then.
Yeah.
So I guess, I'm sure there's people out there that don't know what RuneScape is. So what exactly is RuneScape and how is it played? Because it's a video game, but how is it played?
Yeah, so there's two RuneScapes. If you go out and Google RuneScape right now, there's two RuneScapes. There's RuneScape 3 and there's old school RuneScape. RuneScape 3 is the original game that has been extrapolated upon for about 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Old school RuneScape was released in 2013 after a contentious update to the main timeline game.
Mm-hmm.
Based off of a 2007 save file.
Okay.
And I pretty much exclusively play old school RuneScape, so I don't really know anything about the modern RS3.
Right.
And that's the less popular of the two.
Mm-hmm.
But old school RuneScape is, if you remember RuneScape from a child,
Mm-hmm.
your childhood, it's basically just that game, but with some new stuff added to it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's effectively an RPG game that you control entirely by clicking.
Mm.
You want to go here, you click there. You want to attack something, you click it. There's no combo abilities or attack rotations or anything like that like there is in World of Warcraft or some of the other popular MMOs.
Right.
It's pretty bare bones, and as a result, the little mechanics that they use have kind of turned the higher end gameplay into almost a sort of rhythm and timing game. It's a pretty interesting evolution.
Interesting. So what's the goal then? What are you trying to play towards? Are you just trying to get resources, or what's the goal?
It's pretty sandbox, and the goals are kind of what you want to get out of the game. There's quests, obviously, so one of the main goals is to complete all the quests or to get a certain sort of tier of quests done so that you can unlock certain items.
Mm-hmm.
And some people just want to go and kill bosses and get money and have the biggest bank that they can. And some people want to quote unquote max their account, which involves getting 99 in each of the skills in the game. And then there are different game modes that you can use to sort of direct your goals, but it's pretty open.
Okay, so there's a lot of different options. Do you have a play style that you kind of tend towards?
Yeah, I've been mainly a PVMer, which is player versus monster, the people that go out and they do bossing, they kill things, they try to hunt for those really rare drops and make a lot of money, or unlock the cosmetic upgrades that don't really do anything but are super rare and kind of flex items.
Okay. Do you think that you have a lot of those flex items? You think you got a good stack of it?
Generally, I think I'm doing pretty decently,
Yeah,
but I've also been pretty unlucky compared to a lot of people that I know. So,
that is fair. If there's one thing I know about you, luck is not always on your side.
yeah, that's very true. And in a game where you hunt for 1 in 3,000 drop chances,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
not great.
You're gonna go through every all 3,000 of those tries to get it.
And then some.
So, what's your journey been like to play? Like, how long have you been playing? When did you start, and how'd you find out about it?
So I started playing in like second grade back when it was like still regular, just RuneScape
Mhm.
and not old school RuneScape. But old school RuneScape specifically, I discovered sometime in college. It would have been probably 2016 or 2017, and like logged into my account, and because it was a new game, I had to start over. Um, and I played off and on pretty much until WoW Classic came out, and I tried that and I hated it.
Okay.
So I went back to RuneScape because of the nostalgia appeal, and ever since then, like about like September 2019 is when I really kind of kicked it into full gear and
Hmm.
was playing the game consistently, trying to, do stuff.
Right. So like it went from like being like a kind of a side thing to like your main like this is what I play kind of thing.
Yeah,
Okay. Because I remember in college you used to play it like you'd like do stuff kind of on the side, but it was never like oh this is the only thing that you did. You had a lot of other stuff that you did. You know.
yeah, for sure. But it was pretty easy to get like sucked into the game.
Yeah. So you started in second grade then. That's pretty early.
I think it was around then. It
Mhm.
was like 2007, 2008
Okay.
when I first experienced RuneScape. One of my friends was telling me about the game and like suggested it, and then some of my neighbors played it, and I played it a lot, but I didn't really accomplish anything
Right.
because it was still in like a very Wild West sort of days where there wasn't a lot of documented, like, nowadays you can go and look stuff up on the wiki and
Yeah.
you know everything about a game.
Yeah.
um Back then it was very, you have to go out and experience stuff, you have to learn the game for yourself and figure out things,
I
and that's
guess
not the case today.
I guess this is a side question, but do you think that that was like a more fun experience when you couldn't just look up a wiki where you had to like explore it, or do you like the new age like look up a wiki, be more efficient, do what you want to do? Like which one do you prefer?
I think they are different. I don't know if I would necessarily prefer one over the other,
Right.
but I enjoyed the freedom and exploration of the old stuff, but I don't think it works in today's like day and age.
Hmm.
I think just the way that gaming has developed in general isn't the same.
That's fair. It's definitely a different age.
I guess to like actually answer the question, I prefer today's more because it's pretty like easier, like more clear and focused on like what you can do instead of just sort of wandering aimlessly.
That's fair. Direction is nice, especially in a game you're gonna spend a lot of time on.
Yeah.
So you've been playing for a while. It sounds like it's been a little off and on, but for at least the last 4 years, playing really consistently, and before that, playing relatively consistently. Do you have any favorite like moments that you've had playing it? Anything that you can think of that's been memorable?
Yes. There are sort of like two main, I guess there's like, I would say like five that are kind of like core but aren't really like, it's not easy to order.
Hmm.
The most like the one that first comes to mind is recently, like a few months ago, or I guess it's like, oh, it would have been in April now, March
Hmm.
or April.
Hmm.
Um, I was getting back into like the PVM aspect after having taken a break.
Right.
And a new raid released last year that I didn't really enjoy at first, and after it had been explored, I was getting back into it. And there are different levels of the raid. where you can turn on different challenges in order to like modulate the difficulty to what you want it to be.
Right.
And at a specific point, there is a cosmetic upgrade that is guaranteed if you can complete the raid deathless at like this expert plus difficulty.
Okay.
And I was doing it with one of the friends who I had met like earlier that month or the month prior. Right. And we were running through the raid trying to get it. And it was supposed to be a practice run because I had another friend that had been helping me sort of learn it.
Right.
And was pushing towards this. And we managed to clear it, and once we cleared the raid, it's guaranteed that I'm going to get that cosmetic upgrade that says I did this without dying. I am like a competent raider.
Oh yeah.
And in addition, we managed to roll a unique item like from the raid.
Right.
And it was in my name because when you roll a unique, it's going to be in one of the person's name in the raid, and that person gets the unique, and then everyone else gets regular loot, and then you can either share it or like keep it for yourself, whatever.
Oh yeah,
that's up to you. But I managed to roll it in my name, so I got the special like cosmetic upgrade that is right. Like I can do this. Then on top of that, I rolled a they're called purples because it like the chest glows purple.
Right.
I rolled a purple, but then I opened the chest and I also pulled the like 1 in 250 pet roll or something like that. I don't know what the exact rate is, but you roll like I got a miniature version of like the final boss that I can follow me around.
Oh, that's cool.
And it's like 1 in 500, 1 in 1,000. It's like absurdly rare, and like these raids take like 30 to 40 minutes on average.
Right.
And in one raid, I managed to pull the special backpack to say that I did this without dying, a purple chest, and a pet, which is one of the most absurdly like rare, crazy drops that I've ever seen in the game.
That's crazy. That must have been like a really cool feeling, especially like since you don't get that lucky all the time.
Yeah, there was like 10 people in the Discord call watching this happen. Everyone was screaming. People are yelling at me.
That's awesome.
A crazy experience.
Did you keep the item that was yours? Did you keep it, or did you share the wealth?
I split it. Mm-hmm. We sold it and then split the gold 50-50. That's cool. And I gave one of my friends some money too because they lent out some gear. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
Making sure it comes back around, hopefully.
Oh yeah.
That's cool. Any other memories that come to mind?
Yeah, there was another one. It's funnily enough from another raid. I guess the big one would be there is an item that is like the rarest PVM drop in the game.
Okay.
It is effectively like if you had to translate the money, like in-game value of the item to real-world money, it would be between $500 to $1,000 depending on like the economy.
Right.
Like in US dollars.
Yeah, pretty expensive stuff.
This is like the item that you go for. And I first learned how to do this raid. It's Chambers of Xeric. It was the first raid introduced to the game, and I learned how to do it. I think the first one that I did was January 20th, 2020. Mm-hmm. And me and one of my friends had this thing that we called the Blood Pact, where we're like, okay, we're going to raid together. If I'm not in the raid, then you're not raiding, like that sort of thing.
Right.
We're going to hunt for this specific item together. Mm-hmm. And we spent the better part of 8 months hunting for one drop.
Oh, wow.
It took me over 600 raids in order to like get this item. And it wasn't even in either of our names, but we wanted to see it together. And it was in November 2020 that me and one of my friends managed to pull this item with someone else that we raid with frequently.
That's cool.
And it was like an 8-month journey that like finally culminated, and it was like very satisfying.
Yeah, I bet. Especially when you put all that work in, you finally, you're gratified. You got it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's cool.
It was over 600 raids at like 30 minutes each, so like
right.
300 hours of like just this content in the game.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
What like keeps you going when you're doing that? Like, because I'm sure that could get repetitive, and you get like probably disheartened at certain points.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like it's the only way out is through, which really sucks, and like the only way that you can like keep motivated is by like taking breaks, doing other things, playing other games.
Right, right.
And like at the end of the day, it's social content. You're not doing it alone. So it feels better because you have someone else going through that with you, or like you have people to talk to, keep you up, like keep you enjoying it. And there are like, it's not like I'm not seeing any loot throughout that time.
Right.
So the other like lesser but still significant loot is very nice too.
That's fair. So, there's a lot of other MMOs out there, right? Especially, they're very popular genre. What do you think makes RuneScape stand out from other MMOs? Like, what do you think sets it apart?
It is very unique in its execution. Everyone wants to be World of Warcraft, but RuneScape is like the one game, like old school RuneScape is the one game that doesn't. RuneScape 3, the reason why old school RuneScape exists is because RuneScape 3 had this thing called the Evolution of Combat update, where they took the old system where it was just you click on something and your character attacks it, and it will stop attacking it when either you're dead, it's dead, or like something else happens that makes you stop attacking it. And it replaced it with the World of Warcraft style of abilities, like you have the bar and you press a button and you like do a spin, then you press something else and you dash through stuff and attack it, and it switched to that style. And old school RuneScape went back on that and was like, no, we're playing with that old style of gameplay. And I think the big thing that sets RuneScape apart is, number one, the combat is very bare bones and archaic, and they learned how to do a lot by like integrating movement and some of the other mechanics in order to make the combat interesting as opposed to just attack rotations. And the second thing is the quests. Quests in like World of Warcraft are very go collect this, go collect that, kill 5 of these, kill 5 of those. And then you would have like the big story quest where you would watch an NPC do all the work. Whereas old school RuneScape, you are the main character. Like you do everything. Like if there is a big monster that needs to die, it is you that is going to kill it 9 times out of 10. And on top of it, the stories in the game are like, they're actually stories with like funny dialogue and like characters. And a lot of times they're pretty boring and people hate on them or whatever, but they're still better than the quests in other games, even if they are very tedious and long.
So would you characterize it as maybe like more of a personality?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
The game has a very distinct personality.
Okay. So you touched on this a little bit, and I'm actually curious. So we have this old school RuneScape, and then we have this new version. First off, I have to ask, why is it called RuneScape 3? Is there a second and first RuneScape? Like what's that like? What's going on with that?
I don't know exactly. So like there was like the original RuneScape that's called like RuneScape Classic. Then there was a point in time where RuneScape Classic shifted and became RuneScape, or what like became known as RS2. Which is what old school RuneScape is based off of. And then when Evolution of Combat released, it started getting referred to as RuneScape 3.
I see.
So like it was like
stages.
The third major stage in the game's lifespan, and I don't think there has been another major shift like that. But I'm not like up to date or pay attention
Yeah.
to like that version of RuneScape at all, but it's still referred to as RS3.
Now, old school RuneScape was created because of this dissatisfaction with this update. Now, am I correct in understanding that old school RuneScape was created by like the community? Like, am I understanding that is old school RuneScape still not supported officially, or is it like how does that work?
It's supported officially. If you have a RuneScape account and you pay for membership, you can log into old school RuneScape or RuneScape 3 onto like the member servers.
Hmm.
And that one account goes between either game. You can't play both at the same time,
Right.
but it works for both games. Um, it's supported officially, but it is very community driven because the game was originally released based off of a poll, I believe, and
Hmm.
almost every major update goes through polls.
Hmm.
And if like a new quest is going to be added to the game, it needs to be polled with a 70% approval rating if
Oh,
it's
that's
going to
interesting.
get added.
That's
Yeah.
very unique. I think I've never heard of a game doing anything like that.
No. I think it's the only game that I know of that has like actual polls that can gatekeep content. And it causes a lot of frustration for both the community and like the developers
Hmm.
because stuff that they work hard on will like not pass and people will complain about it, and there's been like people are like, oh, they're spite voting because it's like the PvPers update and they don't want PvPers to have fun in the game or like
Right.
whatever. And people are like, oh, people don't know what's good for the game. They just vote yes on anything that benefits them. And like to an extent that's true, and like there's definitely goods and bads that come with this type of system,
Hmm.
but I think overall it's been generally positive for the game in
Yeah.
keeping it like good. One of the things that like failed to poll, for example, is like Mountain Dew sponsorships in game type thing,
Oh, interesting.
where it's like, oh, you can get Mountain Dew potions or something like that. I don't know,
Yeah.
but like things like that have been gate kept by the community because of these polls, and some things that may have been beneficial didn't come to the game because of polls also, but
Yeah, it's hard to say
overall,
for sure, you know what I mean?
yeah.
But it's very interesting that the community drives so much. And to be, I want to make sure I'm clear. This is not how RuneScape 3 runs, right? Or do you know?
Correct. RuneScape 3 doesn't have a polling system. It is just whatever the devs want goes.
And then it's old school RuneScape is kind of like its own thing. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think that these polls like does it push your RuneScape community together? Or do you think that makes it more like fractions and makes it more like fractured in general?
I think the polls add to the polarization
Mm-hmm.
that already exists.
Mm.
So like there's the PvPers that want to go into like the dangerous areas of the game and kill other players.
Mm-hmm.
Then there are the PvMers who want to go and seek out the monsters and kill them for money and like cosmetics and like loot. And then there are the skillers that want to just sit there and fish and cut trees and mine rocks.
Right.
And each of these communities wants their own thing, and these polls can put these communities at odds, but those sort of like grievances are already there because of the conflicting nature of them in the game.
Right. Interesting. Do you vote in these polls yourself?
Sometimes if I feel like reading them, they're
Yeah.
pretty involved, but some of the stuff is like interesting to look at, and it's interesting to get to know what's coming into the game. And if I do read through them, then usually I'll vote, but
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times it's like, well, my one vote isn't going to make that big of a difference, and I don't have a strong opinion on this, so I'm just gonna
Yeah.
like leave it to see what other people say.
That's fair. That's very fair. So RuneScape is a subscription-based game. You have to get a subscription to play it. Um,
Yes.
why do you think that is?
Um, they need to make money, and Runes RuneScape 3 has microtransactions. Old school RuneScape doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
If old school RuneScape wants to exist, they need to have some way of monetizing the game, and the subscription system is the most simple, direct way for it to be a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a live service game, so a one-time flat rate won't really cover 10 years of development.
That's fair. Are you happy with how the subscription service works, or do you want to change it in any way? Like, do you think that how it's working so far is fair?
I think it's pretty fair. One thing that would be nice is letting you have multiple accounts
Mm.
under one subscription. So instead of like having, there's like Iron Man accounts that are like you can't interact with other players as freely as you would in a normal account.
Mm-hmm.
They're like special niche accounts. Like I want to have a PvPer that's a certain combat level to fight certain players
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. And if you have like 3 or 4 or 5 accounts, which can be pretty common amongst RuneScape players, you're going to have to pay for the game 3 or 4 or 5 times.
Oh, okay, yeah, that does kind of suck.
But at the same time, it's also kind of fair because you're taking up space in the game and like you're actively playing the game more with these extra accounts and benefiting more from the dev time.
Yeah.
So I can see an argument for like people having to pay more in order to have increased access to the game,
Do
so
you
to
think
speak.
do you think they should have like bundles or something? Like, like a discounted bundle, like say what is it right now? It's like $11 for 1 month or something like that?
I think it's 12.50 for 1 month
Okay.
now.
So 12.50 for 1 month, but say you did like I don't know, like 25 would be for 2, but say you could do like you get 3 accounts for $30 a month or something like that. Like just that way it's a little bit less than if you bought it individually. You think that would be helpful?
I think that would be helpful and would help people branch out and try out different modes of the game more.
Mm-hmm.
Like most people just seem to play a main account, which is a unrestricted account that you just go and do whatever you want.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's the different niche PvP builds, which are main accounts, but you limit like your combat stats in certain way to be a certain combat bracket. Or there's the different Iron Man accounts. There's regular Iron Man, which you can't trade with players or use the Grand Exchange, which is like the auction house from World of Warcraft or whatever, where you just like Amazon whatever item you want. You can't do that. You have to go and get it yourself. Then there's Hardcore Iron Man, where you die and you lose the status and the prestige that comes with it. Then there's Group Iron Man, which lets you, play Iron Man, but you can interact with the 5 people in your group or however many there is.
Mm-hmm.
And there's Ultimate Iron Man, which is like a regular Iron Man, but you also can't use a bank. And these are like fun, different ways to play the game that you just can't experience if you don't have the money either in game or out of game to
it's gate cap a little bit.
Fund membership. Yeah. So having a way to experience those game modes while still having access to your main account, I think would do a lot of good for the game.
Mm-hmm.
Personally.
That would be good. Maybe even I'm kind of spitballing here now. Maybe even it's like your first account like 12.50, but maybe it's like $5 to add another account each time, so you could have as many as you wanted, but you keep paying or whatever the amount that they could charge. But some kind of incentive to like, hey, if you want to do more, it's not as high of a barrier to entry.
Yeah, and there are like, I don't think that would affect anything actually. I was gonna say there's like always like bot problems in RuneScape because it's a very simple game. So like people have like bot farms of hundreds of accounts to go and farm like this one thing, but they don't usually pay for membership with legitimate credit cards anyway. So I don't think that would really affect the player base.
Yeah, that's fair. So, RuneScape has been going since I believe it's 2001, right? It's when it first came out.
I think 2001 or 2002. I don't know for sure though.
So that's pretty long. I mean, that's over 20 years. What do you think is the source or like the cause of RuneScape's longevity? Like, what do you think has made it like succeed for so long?
The reason why it's still around is largely due to nostalgia, I feel. People hear about the game and they are like, I remember that from like elementary school or middle school. I'm going to check it out. And then they play it and they're like, oh, this is pretty chill. I don't really have to do too much and I get like to see numbers go up and it's satisfying. And then you realize that everything takes 30 to 50 hours for like a minor goal and you're just kind of stuck. It's like Warframe is a very grindy game.
Yeah.
But this takes like 5 times as long.
Which is crazy because Warframe already kind of killed me. Like I couldn't even keep up with the grind for Warframe.
Yeah.
But
And then World of Warcraft is a different kind of grind.
yeah,
It's not comparable. They're both insane grind games, but very different in the way that they're done.
right. So do you think the grinding is like kind of what makes, because people like always want to keep playing more and more to get to the next goal, and because the goals are so long, do you think that adds to the longevity?
I think so. I think it's like because it takes so long and because it's like relatively low effort and it's something that you can just log in and do whenever. You don't need to do too much scheduling unless you're like
Mm-hmm.
doing very specific things in the game. It's just very available and like you're always going to have something to do.
That's fair. So, do you think that RuneScape will ever die? And if you do, what do you think
Um
will kill it?
I think if it dies, Jagex killed it. I don't think it will die out on its own. I think it will either be something so controversial that it kills off the player base, or the company just decides it's not worth the money anymore,
Mm-hmm.
or something along those lines.
Mm.
I don't think that it will ever like truly just sort of fade away
Mm.
unless gaming evolves so far beyond it and RuneScape doesn't keep up.
That's fair. This actually kind of leads into another question I have now. There's a possibility that this is actually for RuneScape 3. I did a very brief search. Actually, just this came
Mhm.
up in my search. What's going on with the whole Hero Pass thing? I hear a bunch of people are really upset about that.
So I think this is an RS3 thing, but I
Okay.
think it is something that I've heard about. Um, I believe it's like a battle pass type system
Okay.
for RS3, which is like microtransactions.
Right.
And with the money that you put into it, it actually changes gameplay
Oh,
instead
wow.
of just like being cosmetics or things.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
It's like pay to win.
it's pay to win and monetization in a direction that the community is unhappy with. We've actually had like 4 or 5 people who are like active sort of in our RuneScape Discord come and be like, "Hey, I'm done with RS3 because of this battle pass update.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm coming back to OSRS. What do I need to know?"
Yeah.
So I think that's what you're talking about, but I'm not
Yeah,
exactly
I,
sure.
I I think it is. It's very very recent. I just saw it was like all over the news and like, or like the news tab when you search RuneScape. Like it's a big
Yeah.
thing right now. Um, so I'm actually this actually leading to another question that I kind of have. So you have these two. So first off, they're both supported by the same developer, right? Old School RuneScape and RuneScape 3.
Yep.
Um,
Jagex, but I think it's 2 different dev teams.
yeah, but do you think that like, because Old School RuneScape is almost like the name Old School kind of implies like it's definitely like an older style game. You know what I mean? Like there's no microtransactions. You have these community polling. It's very community based. It seems like a lot of
Yeah.
like the really bad toxic traits or practices of gaming haven't really seeped into Old School RuneScape for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that having 2 games, one that's the newer version and one that's the older version, allows the older version to like exist? Like, do you think that Old School RuneScape could exist without RuneScape 3?
I don't think so. I'm pretty sure RuneScape, like old school RuneScape, is not profitable on its own, but it is enough of a driving force, like for community and goodwill to the RuneScape name, that it keeps like RS3 afloat, and RS3 is where all the money is. Because with a lot of microtransactions in general, it's always the whales that
Right.
are like the large majority of the money, and that doesn't exist in old school RuneScape. Like the
Right.
closest you can get to a whale is like people buy bonds that you can sell in game and like
Right.
trade in game for all like for membership.
Mm-hmm.
And the closest you can get to a whale for old school RuneScape is someone that goes and buys in-game currency through Jagex effectively.
Right.
And that will only get you so far because there's a limit to how much you need.
Yeah.
Whereas with RS3, there's all like decades of cosmetics that you can buy. There's
Yeah.
upgrades to skilling, PVM. Like you can buy gold the same way for RS3. Like RS3 is the reason why old school can exist, and old school is the reason why RS3 is still a thing.
Interesting. So it's like a
I
symbiotic
think.
relationship almost.
I think so.
Do you think, like, because that's a very specific model, right? Do you think
Yeah.
that other games could like ever attempt to do a similar model? Like, I'm just kind of, picking a game here. Like, let's say Call of Duty. Like a modern Call of Duty has
Mhm.
microtransactions. It's very like modern. You have the different skins and stuff like that. You have Warzone, which is more of like a battle royale, and
Yeah.
that's not for everyone. You know what I mean? Like, do you think that like maybe they should make like a more like old school Call of Duty that's like completely bare bones, but then have like the newer games that can like they can feed into each other? Do you think that would be like beneficial for them, or do you think there's something special about RuneScape that allows that model to work?
I think for something like Call of Duty specifically, there's a way that it would work.
Mm-hmm.
Call of Duty is a very like cycle based game where it's
Yes.
like you have a year, maybe two, if like it's a particularly special time
Right.
where you have the game. And then people will get bored of that game because it's pretty like you do the same thing over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And there's different game modes, but they don't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
So like an older version of that game, I think wouldn't have the same longevity that something like RuneScape has.
Mm-hmm.
An apt comparison could be something like World of Warcraft and World of
Right.
Warcraft Classic.
Mm.
Because World of Warcraft has tried this and they've seemed to have had like marginal success,
Mm-hmm.
but not to the same scale that like old school has, where it became the go-to game mode,
Right.
where it's like more people are playing the old school version than the new school version.
Interesting.
I think it depends on the game,
Mm-hmm.
like really, and the amount of dev support behind it.
That's fair.
Um, I don't know. It's really tough to say because I don't know of any games that developed the same way that RuneScape did, where there was like a sizable shift that kind of changed the way people perceive the game.
Yeah, that is a very how do I word it? It's a very particular set of circumstances that kind of led to it. I guess so to kind of almost take it back to something that you and I both are into. I guess you could almost say something similar kind of happened with Yu-Gi-Oh, where
Mhm.
Yu-Gi-Oh has the modern current format, but there are the other formats like Goat format, Edison format that people go back to and play, and there's even like small tournaments. I think there was recently an Edison tournament, a tournament in person. I think actually.
I know there are quote unquote time wizard events
Uh-huh.
at YCSs,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I think the one of the time wizard events was an Edison tournament
Yeah.
that was like pretty sizable. And
Yeah.
I think something like RuneScape, where there is that like history of the game
Mm-hmm.
and it has developed linearly over time, there is an audience for that.
Yeah.
Um, like for Yu-Gi-Oh, but I don't know. Like I can't think of any other games off the top of my head that are comparable.
You're right. I mean, it is interesting because I almost like wonder, like if I was a game developer, I'd look at the success of RuneScape and like it's almost like you get to have your cake and eat it too. You get to have both things. You get to have the more like core experience and then the more modern experience, which is kind of cool, but yeah, probably be hard to replicate.
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
um, one of my last questions that I have kind of prepared here is so you play a lot of RuneScape. If you
Mhm.
were to make any changes to old school RuneScape, what would they be? What do you think it could do to be improved?
The servers need to be like rebuilt from the ground up.
Okay, that's fair.
Um, as I said, this game has developed into an almost rhythm game type
Mhm.
style. In that like the game moves on 0.6 second ticks.
Mm.
And every server tick something can happen. And there are different things that you can do, like you can attack, you can change your weapon, change your gear. The enemy can change what they're attacking with. They can go from magic to ranged.
Mhm.
And you have ways to nullify damage from magic and ranged. And like there can be area type attacks. And all of these things happen on these intervals, and sometimes you just don't move. The server decides that it's
Mm.
not going to read what you're doing and whatever. And these like things that you have to do on a specific timing in order to be successful at, you just
Mm.
can't because the game won't let you, because the game servers are not keeping up with the game itself.
Right.
And if the game servers were fixed, the way the game has been developing and progressing, I think would be fine.
Yeah.
But they've been pushing for this very like it's called, like, they call it tick tight content, where you have to do things within a certain amount of game ticks in order to be successful. And I think that the number one thing that would like make the game better is fixing these game servers. Secondary would be introducing more like sort of mid-game content that you don't need to have like all the like high-end gear and like lots of experience to do. Fill in the sort of like mid-game experience in like content that we call it the anime check, where you can like watch anime on your second monitor and not die killing a boss.
Right.
Some more content like that, because the game has moved a lot into the tick tight content and away from the sort of like semi AFK enjoyment that's like relaxing.
Yeah, I remember that used to be something that you would do, is you would like kind of like AFK and like watch something and kind of get some resources and get some, the numbers to tick up. But it sounds like, if again what they're going for is more like you have to do things in a specific time frame, that's like definitely more focus based.
Yeah.
Which is good for certain instances, but not good if that's like the only thing you could do in a game that's generally a little more leisurely sometimes. You should have the option.
Yeah, exactly.
Any other changes you'd make, or is that kind of it?
I think those are the two big ones. Otherwise, I think the game is pretty like, it's in a pretty decent spot.
Yeah, it's healthy.
Like, new stuff just came out, so there's like the economy's shifting and stuff hasn't settled, but that's always going to be the case, especially if you actually want the game to keep moving along and not just be locked in time.
It's good to have that intrigue going on, you know what I mean? It's almost like it's a real living, breathing market or city, or whatever it is, you know what I mean? If things aren't shifting, it's not going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Any other last like thoughts, or like any other things you want to share about RuneScape before we end today?
I think the thing that really draws me to this game is the community and the social aspect of the game, because there's not really a lot going on, and there's not like a lot to do when you're just like sitting there cutting a tree, except for like talk to people, or like if you want to go and kill these bosses, some of them require you to have friends. And like meeting these people and doing these things in the game has really like, in a way, changed my life and the way that like I interact with people. Because when I first came to this game, I didn't have a lot of like friends to hang out with consistently, but now I have a entire Discord server of like 1,000 people that I can just ping, and then there are going to be like people that will be like, yeah, I'll come do something. And I think that's really cool.
It's nice to have that community, especially with, it's hard to have that with a lot of different games. You know what I mean? Like any game that you play, if you don't have a community behind it, I guess maybe single player games, but any multiplayer game, if you don't have a community behind it, it's really hard to get into and really hard to like, it could be a barrier to entry. So that's really awesome that the community has been really good to you.
Yeah. And I think generally, like, obviously there's going to be the bad eggs in a community, but if you go to the right places and know where to look, it's pretty easy to find good people in the game. And a big part of that is finding content creators.
I was going to say, I guess, say anyone who's, childhood interest is sparked, or anyone who has a new interest in RuneScape, say they wanted to pick it up and they wanted to get into these communities, any content creators or like Discord servers you recommend people to check out?
Yeah, there are two big ones that I am like a big fan of and I actively take part in. There is Nine Rain, is a person that I have been in the community for like since I started playing again. It was the first community that I joined back into. And I've met a lot of good people there, and it's not super active because he's not a very active content creator. He's got a lot going on in his life, but he makes very good content. It's story driven, but like gameplay at the same time.
Okay.
And there's a lot of good people there. And then the other one is Hanani, or the Grass Punks is what their like in-game group in their Discord is called.
Okay.
And they're a bunch of like super horny, goofy people. Um, and their content creator likes to do like just really dumb stuff, and she's Australian and has a funny accent. So
Yeah, that helps.
yeah,
That's cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Dante. I really enjoyed the conversation.
yeah, of course. Thank you for having me.